The new look Raiders are starting to take shape. Pete Carroll and company are set to take on a competitive AFC West division, from retaining Patrick Graham as DC to stealing Chip Kelly from the Ohio State. The panel and I are breaking it all down. Don't go anywhere because Sin City Beat starts right now.
From Las Vegas, this is Sin City Beat.
Well, hello there and welcome to Sin City Beat. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. I'm Mike Davis. Sin City Beat is the show that dissects the Vegas sports world through the eyes of the sports reporters and storytellers leading the charge. Joining the action today, we have Ray Brewer, managing editor of the Las Vegas Sun, Case Kiefer, sports editor with the Las Vegas Sun, and Mark Anderson, sports reporter with the Associated Press. Thanks so much for being here, guys. So Chip Kelly is having a pretty darn good year, fresh off a national championship at Ohio State University, where he served as an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Now, Kelly returns to the NFL as the OC for the Raiders, becoming the NFL's highest paid offensive coordinator, as the Raiders are set to pay Kelly a salary of $6 million per season. So last season, while calling plays with the Buckeyes, he made $2.1 million, now $6 million here in Vegas. So Kelly's offense averaged more than 35 points per game this past season. In total, he's had 34 years of coaching experience, 30 at the collegiate level, and 4 as a head coach in the NFL with, of course, the Eagles and the 49ers. So Ray Brewer, does bringing in Chip Kelly get you excited?
Doesn't get me totally excited, but I do get it. I worry with Chip Kelly because his last NFL experience, head coach 49ers, only 2 wins. I know that some people love Chip Kelly, other people didn't. I wonder if his personality is going to mesh well with the Raiders. What I do know about the hire is the guy knows football. He totally rewrote how college football looks and feels with the spread offense. While he was at Oregon, you saw it funnel all the way down to the high school and youth levels. The guy's an offensive genius. Of course, the Raiders still don't have a quarterback, and that's $6 million. You're as only good as your Jimmies and your Joes, and I don't know who's going to sling the rock around for the silver and black.
Well, speaking of Jimmies and Joes, I think to a degree, part of the reason why this is an exciting hire is not that his system or his play calling is QB proof, but it's certainly a guy who has a really good acumen with scoring points, and you can plug and play a lot of different guys in there and score some points.
Yeah, he has shown an ability to kind of adjust to his personnel, and I know that's something he's talked about that is very important to him, that you design your offense around who you have. So I think that is good. And to me, if you're grading it on a curve, I think you can be excited. As we sat here last week and talked about some of the candidates, I thought it was going to be a retread Pete Carroll guy, and that didn't get me going at all. I was worried about the offense. I think he did go a little bit outside of the box, a little outside of his comfort zone, bring someone new in. I do think it'll be an adjustment from Chip Kelly. When he was at Ohio State, he had the best players in every game at every position. It's not going to be that way for the Raiders. So I'm a little in between, but I think if you're a Raiders fan, you can be excited.
Well, Mark, here's what I always think about when we talk about the coaching cycle and the carousel and the constant change we're seeing at these positions and these roles. Not every coach is meant to be a head coach. And I think a lot of times as you're having success and you're growing through your career, you got to get your pride beaten out of you a little bit to maybe then recognize, listen, I'm not a head coach, but I'm a hell of an offensive coordinator. I'm a hell of a defensive coordinator. We've seen that with Vic Fangio now with the Eagles. Is that what Chip Kelly really is here? Is he one of the best offensive coordinators you can have with your team, but just not a head coach?
I take a little exception. I'm not a head coach. I mean, what he did as a head coach at Oregon was pretty phenomenal. I mean, so he can be a head coach. He did talk he had a Zoom call today. He did talk about where his future may go from here, because he was asked about that at the end. He's like, he's focused on this, and he talked about why he went from being the head coach at UCLA to the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. And he said when he's preparing for the bowl game his final year at UCLA, and he'd lost his quarterbacks coach, and he was in the position room actually hands-on coaching again, he realized how much he missed it. And so I think he's at a stage in his career. If he never becomes a head coach again, that's fine.
Right.
And so I think his focus is going to be on being the best offensive coordinator he can be for the Raiders. And I think it's a terrific hire. I mean, the Raiders had to take a big swing. It's clearly a big swing. And, we'll see if it works out, but I really do like the hire.
It's fascinating because so many different roles within the NFL, people treat it differently. Some head coaches are not about the details, and it's more of a figurehead, and you're kind of controlling the thing. It sounds like Chip Kelly really wants to be detail-oriented. So I'm high on it. Maybe not as high even as Pete Carroll, but I like this, Ray.
I'm lower than everybody here. I just don't think the guy's been in the NFL in a while.
Right.
The college game to the pro game is massively different. This guy isn't exactly the best people person out there, according at least to Shady McCoy from your Philadelphia Eagles, who hated him when he was the Eagles coach. And $6 million's a lot to spend on an offensive coordinator. I get it. I don't love it as much as you guys do, but let's see what he can do. Let's see if he can prove himself.
I think he might have been wanting to come back to the NFL, though. If you remember last year at about this time, he interviewed with Antonio Pierce. I think he was really interested in the Raiders job. There were some hang-ups there. It didn't happen. I think he ended up at Ohio State because being with Ryan Day, their relationship, it was a great spot for him. But I think he always kind of had his eye on coming back to the NFL.
Okay, we're going to see what happens. Well, a new OC, but the same DC. Patrick Graham is returning to the Raiders. What does the panel think about that move? Stick around.
You're watching Sin City Beat.
The Las Vegas Raiders are entering a new era. A lot has changed, but some things have stayed the same. Patrick Graham is staying put as he returns for his 4th season as the team's defensive coordinator. Graham will serve in the same role, but now under his 3rd head coach. So, Case, do you like the Raiders retaining Graham, and do you believe that continuity from a coaching standpoint on that side of the ball is a good thing for this team?
I could take or leave the continuity. I do think it's fair to give Graham another shot. That defense was ravaged. Every one of their key players was hurt last year. And I do think he is a very shrewd guy, a really good tactician. What I was most worried about with Pete Carroll was he was going to fall into kind of the stale patterns he did at the end of Seattle, where he was kind of going with the same coordinators. Defensively, they just ran cover 2, put it out there. Some defensive coordinators are all about cover 2, some about the blitz. I like that Patrick Graham really mixes it up. It's week to week. It's different based on what you're going against. So I think he's a good mind. And I think where they are with the other candidates, I thought it was a pretty good hire. This one gets my seal of approval.
Ray, you disagree with this. You don't like this. You were saying during the break you don't love it.
Yeah, so X's and O's aside, I just think if you're hitting the reset button, you're bringing in a new voice in Pete Carroll, who's got this great energy, and you're bringing in this new OC as Chip Kelly, why have one holdover for the sake of just consistency? Even though he may or may not have been the best person from the job, but you've got to get rid of the poison, right? You kept Antonio, you fired Josh McDaniel, but you kept Antonio Pierce. You fired Antonio Pierce. Why don't you just cleanse the whole organization? You've got Tom Brady in there. You've hit the reset button. It's a different mentality. You got one holdover. Maybe some bad tendencies. Stay with that. That would be my primary.
It's a fair point, Mark.
It is, but
Thank you.
But I don't think you keep him just for continuity's sake. I look at what happened during the season. He lost basically his entire pass rush, and that pass rush actually improved as the season went on. That told me a lot right there. That even with that Max Crosby out of the lineup, they actually started getting more sacks, more quarterback pressures. And if you looked at it, I think 4 games in 5 weeks held opponents under 20 points. Now, granted, they weren't the best offenses, but considering their injuries on defense, I was incredibly impressed with that. And if you want to know about a coach, if the Raiders let him go, he'd have been hired 10 minutes later by someone else.
Here's where I think I break with Brewers. I don't look at him as part of the Antonio Pierce staff at all. In fact, when Antonio Pierce got hired as the interim coach, really, merit-wise, it should have been Patrick Graham, but the defense was still playing well then. They didn't want to upend that, so they kind of gave it to the raw culture guy. I think if Antonio Pierce was back this year, Patrick Graham was not going to be back. They were on different trajectories. So I feel like even though you do have that continuity, it's not going to be like we're just rolling the same thing over again. I think Patrick Graham was on his own mission, and I like it ultimately.
That's the thing is, if you don't retain him, then who are you bringing in? Like, who would have been another guy who would have filled that void?
I know they interviewed Rob Leonard, we talked about last week, a defensive line coach who now will presumably be back. And I'm usually the guy that's always like, get younger, bring in fresh ideas. And I did think Rob Leonard was a good candidate, but ultimately you can keep him and develop him more too. So that's the only one that really jumps out to my mind that you could have made a case would be a better fit.
If the Raiders are spending what they're spending,
right,
they're still paying whatever head coaches, and they're giving Chip Kelly $6 million. If you're paying $6 million, you can go get whoever you want. Every defensive coordinator in the league is available at $6 million. Right?
It's another good
I mean,
point.
a lot of defensive coordinators.
Ray's bringing up a lot of good points
I don't
today.
know. A lot of defensive coordinators want to be head coaches ultimately, and I feel like now they're coming into a situation where they have a new head coach. I think the best defensive coordinators are kind of happy where they are and think if they're going to parlay this into a bigger job. I don't necessarily know that you're going to get anybody. And a defensive coordinator, look at their pay scale. You're not giving them $6 million.
Isn't there something to be said about injecting some new and keeping some old and having some synergy with all of that coming together? I think that's a nice thing.
I'm a chemistry guy. I don't disagree. I love chemistry.
Chemistry was my worst grade I got in high school. Right?
But Mike, was it great chemistry?
No.
I mean, they beat Jacksonville, or they played good against Jacksonville, or they played good against this other bad defense, and they picked up some guy from Centennial High School that rushed the quarterback well, and they've got Max Crosby who was hurt and all this stuff. Yeah, great. I get it.
But when Crosby's hurt, when Christian Wilkins, who you paid $100 million to, is hurt, Malcolm Kuntz. I mean, there's so there's a lot of injuries there. So listen, we're not going to agree, but that's okay. We're still a family here, guys. Next, we're going to make-believe land, kind of. Future Hall of Famer Myles Garrett wants out of Cleveland. Is there even a chance? Tell me there's a chance Myles Garrett gets traded to Vegas. Imagine what Crosby on one end and Garrett on the other would look like. We discuss the dream scenario next. At 29 years old, Myles Garrett is the NFL's reigning Defensive Player of the Year, the #1 overall pick back in 2017. He's now a trade piece on the move at the prime of his career. Of course, Raiders fans immediately dreamt up the idea of having Max Crosby and Myles Garrett team up. Every fan wants to know, is there even a chance? So Mark, tell us the truth right now. Is there any way you could see a trade for Myles Garrett happening here in Vegas?
I really don't, but if you're the Raiders, you got to inquire. And they got so much cap room. I think you could be creative and find a way to make it work. But if he wants to leave the Browns because he wants to go to a winner, that tells me he wants to go to a team that's ready to win now. The Raiders aren't ready to win now. So, the Lions, I know were mentioned a lot earlier. I can see them ending up there, maybe your Eagles. But I just have a hard time seeing them here.
Could you compel somebody like that if he's being stacked up alongside Max Crosby? You got Christian Wilkins, and then on top of it, maybe you land a Shador, and you feel like there's going to be a Jaden Daniels effect. Like maybe something like that could happen if it all trickles out the right way.
Yeah, well, Max Crosby fashions himself a great recruiter. I think he says he can get things done. You're going to need him to really go on the full sell pitch here. And I just don't necessarily think it happened. I think the organization at the very top is focused on, more building towards the future, getting those younger assets. I know there's a lot of people that would love to see it, Max Crosby included, but like you said, he wants to win a Super Bowl. You're going to go from the Browns, who I know have had their own problems, but then, we're going to bring you to a team that hasn't won a playoff game in 23 years. I don't see it happening.
So my thing is that if you would have said at the end of the year, going into the offseason, what is the strength of the Las Vegas Raiders? Probably their defensive line. Mm-hmm. Okay, so why are you going to take a strength? You've got all this cap room. Why take one of your strengths and try to add to it while other areas of the team have dire need? I think the money in free agency needs to address the other side of the line, to the skilled positions. And if you do draft one of the two quarterbacks, Ward or Sanders, you've got to get them some people to get the ball to develop it if you want to have the Jaden Daniels effect, which every team in America is going to say, we're going to draft this person and have the Jaden Daniels effect.
Devil's advocate here, because you're 100% right, but I think here's the other side to the argument is the quarterback solving these other places on the roster. I don't know if it's a slam dunk home run. You bring Myles Garrett in, all of a sudden you have one of the best defenses in the NFL immediately.
And you're going to need it because you ain't going to score any points.
Right. So I think the question is, if you're not able to get a Sam Darnold, then we're talking about middle of the road kind of QBs. Is it good to be in a circumstance where you're shelling out a lot of money for middle of the road, where instead you could have perhaps one of the best defenses of NFL history coming together?
But that doesn't win games in the NFL today. You can have look what the Steelers have done. They've had among the best defenses year after year after year. And where do they wind up every year? You got to be able to score
I just
points.
heard my producer sigh, James.
If you're right there and you can break through and this gets this one last piece, you do it. But the Raiders are so far away everywhere else. And how long does he really make them this great defense? I mean, I know it's harsh, but right now, like when you turn 30 as an edge rusher, that aging curve is typically
Well,
when you go down.
let me ask everybody a question here. Would you rather make a trade for Geno Smith or a trade for Myles Garrett?
Why are the Raiders going to get Geno Smith
I'm just saying,
or Sam Darnold?
Or
the
Sam
AOC
Darnold.
is better than them right now. What?
Wait, what?
To me, I would rather.
Wait, what did you do? Did you just say AOC is better than
Sam
Sam
Darnold,
Darnold?
did you see the last three? The guy threw a pick
God,
six in the
Ray.
flag football
You
Pro
were
Bowl
doing
the
great.
other day.
Every take today was 100% spot on, and now
Did
you're
you
going to say
see the last
AOC?
two Vikings games?
Did you watch the first 15? Where did the sample
was an
sizes?
MVP.
And you're telling me if the Raiders
I
shell
would
out
rather have
whatever-
Geno Smith than Aiden O'Connell, too.
If the Raiders would take Sam Darnold, despite the last two games, tomorrow, if they could.
But I'm just saying, would you rather use that capital and get Myles Garrett and then maybe also have a Jackson Dart or something, or would you rather have Darnold instead of Myles Garrett? Because I think that's a fair question.
I just don't think Garrett. I just don't think Garrett gets you where you want to go. I just don't think.
And I don't think Garrett wants to come.
I don't think.
Yeah,
so
that's one thing we do agree on. I think Darnold and Geno Smith both are way more likely than Myles Garrett, even though I think for the money you can make a strong case as Mike is for Myles Garrett.
It's Las Vegas, guys. Who doesn't want to be in Las Vegas?
I get Vegas, great tax structure with no local income tax, but again, the team just is so underachieving, despite the great Raiders brand and the cool stadium and the great city.
I mean,
it's just you
let's
got to play Mahomes
Don
every year
Taco,
twice.
Roberto's, Del Taco. Just think of all the places he could consume. All this great.
You left off Taco Bell.
Yeah.
I think he's more of a barbecue guy. He's from Texas.
Okay, something like he's a poetry guy. He's a very intellectual NFL player. All right, guys. Next, the panel is going to be making a prediction for the Super Bowl. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Sin City Beat. Well, it's prediction time here for the panel. Super Bowl 59 this Sunday, Eagles versus the Chiefs. The Chiefs are on a quest to three-peat, something that's never been done before in the NFL, but Saquon and the Birds might have something to say about that. So, Ray, what's your bold prediction for Super Bowl Sunday?
This one to me is crystal clear. If it's picking high school games, which I do a lot at Las Vegas Sun, if it's doing college football, if it's pro football, I start with the coaching. Andy Reid is playing chess. Your guy in Philly, he's playing checkers. There's such a big disparity in the coaching box. I think it's Chiefs all the way. Mahomes gets 3 in a row. That's my projection. You know I love you, but it's Chiefs
I
Kingdom,
saw you wince.
not Fly Eagles Fly.
First of all, you think Big Dom he's not playing chess?
I think that Andy Reid is way ahead of everybody else.
All right, what do you think, Mark?
I don't think either team's going to run away with it. I think it's going to be a one-possession game, and you know what happens in one-possession games with the Chiefs.
Right.
I think that's
my
what's
fear.
again.
That's my fear. I feel like the Eagles, in order to win, it can't be a one-possession
agree.
game. It can't be close. They gotta blow them out very quickly, I think.
This has taken a lot of restraint from me. As you've watched anything Brewer and I have done over the last 15 years, our radio show, our podcast, he nitpicks these theories of what he wants to put in. I thought his number one theory is always the Jimmies and the Joes. Give me the guys with the better players. To
point he
me,
makes
Best
is-
the
player
Eagles
on the
have-
field. I
The
love
Eagles
that.
have the better players. I hope I'm wrong. If you read my betting coverage at LasVegasSun.com, you know why. I want the Chiefs to win, but I just think the Eagles are a better team right now. I think it's a close game, too. I'm going to say Eagles 24-21.
Wait, hold up. Why do you want the Chiefs to win?
He's got money on the Chiefs.
Yeah, I bet the Chiefs 9-1 to win the Super Bowl a day after last year's
Really?
Super Bowl. So I've got that 9-1. I bet some alts.
Do you still have the
Eagles
ticket?
plus 3.5 in the app. It's
it's
mobile.
not. Okay, good.
It's in his back pocket after we
I
get
was
him in the
serious. We're
parking
gonna try
lot.
to snag that thing. See, here's my philosophy here. To me, I think there's
Completely objective. Let the audience
As
know.
a Philly boy, of course, am I going to be turning down every Super Bowl invite that I've received in the past 2 weeks and neurotically sitting in front of my television in a dark room calling my father, Stephen Davis, on the phone between every other play? Yes. So, not great. That's not great for my dating, out there.
Yes.
We
But
don't
who do
want
you
a
like
camera on that. But
Who do you like, though?
okay, I can't be unbiased. But I will say, I always believe that you need to knock on the door a few times, like anything in life, dating, relationships, sports. Ray's looking at his watch as I'm getting into my soliloquy. I just think you need to knock on the door a few times. This is a team that was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. There's no way Jalen Hurts is as serious as a heart attack, this dude. I've never seen him smile. There's no way he's going to go into another Super Bowl against the same team and let this happen. Saquon Barkley has been through too much in the NFL. These guys know what this moment means. This is not a first go-around for this team trying to figure out that this is a special moment. They already had heartbreak. Jalen Hurts' phone, the background was the confetti coming down and him being all sulking and just like,
And having one of the best performances in Super Bowl history, by the way.
He made one mistake.
No one seems to remember.
One mistake and he had a fumble. So I just think there might be a lot of juice this time around. Guys like Zach Bonds, guys like Saquon Barkley. This is an opportunity for a lot of veterans to make history on the biggest stage of their life.
Quick question for you. Is Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator of the Eagles, game planning for the Super Bowl, or is he kind of trying to set up his Saints staff?
Okay, you just redeemed yourself, Ray. Because that is my biggest nitpick in the NFL. I hate that coaches can even be going on job interviews before the season's over. That should not be allowed. That needs to be changed.
Barry Odom?
I think
Barry Odom's got his mind on Philly rather than the.
I don't like it.
He's going to be in New Orleans anyways for the Super Bowl. I think on Monday morning he just walks across to the headquarters and has his presser.
That is a concern. I just think if Saquon does his thing, if Saquon has the game that he's been having all season long, all playoff long, if he's running for over 150 and getting in the end zone 2 times, it's over. The other matchup to look at, if Jalen Carter has a bigger game than Chris Jones, that's, I think, a critical thing with Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens. With Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson being a little banged up, if they can contain him and limit Chris Jones to a sack or so, but Jalen Carter's a disruptor, I think that's another X factor.
You started this asking for a bold prediction, so here's mine. If the Eagles win, which I think they will, Jalen Hurts MVP, not Saquon Barkley.
Okay. Ray,
Listen, is A.J. Brown bringing the book to the sidelines to read in between plays?
Inner excellence.
Okay.
Listen, Ray.
Does Kelsey propose to Taylor afterwards?
You're gonna cradle me and comfort me if we lose. Okay.
I'll call you in the middle of the game.
There you go. All right, guys. I'm Mike Davis. I want to thank Mark, Ray, Case. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time here on Sin City Beat. Enjoy Super Bowl Sunday.